So do you have any thoughts about duplicate content and duplication of URLs and so forth?
Using their AI and all of the different tools that they have, we're actually able to increase our revenues 3, 4, and 5 times.
We're not only weathering the storm, but we're actually growing right now.
Yeah, so I feel that very often with what it's also not even going so deep, but just the basics, really, of www, non-www, the trailing slashes, the HTTP and HTTPS, all that kind of stuff very often gets forgotten about or left on the wayside when people are so busy designing their site. And then also when we're going deeper, there's just so much to think about in terms of duplicate content that people forget about, and that's just wasted.
Right. I probably have, I don't know, 50 blog posts just about duplicate content itself.
Right.
I should really go. I don't have the time to go. I don't know. I have such an old site. I'm not going to go through all that stuff and write about it. But the point about HTTPS, WW, non-WW, all that canonical stuff, I think Google handles that for the most part. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about Search Console now is the domain properties, where you just verify one and you get all into it.
Yeah.
It's interesting, especially when Google started supporting, apps in Search Console, which they don't do anymore. All these duplicate URLs with all the same content. So you have AMP, you have Google, you have apps, you have HTTP, HTTPS, WW, non-WW. You have multiple variations on your website. You see the mobile versions and the desktop versions.
Right.
It's a complicated issue search.
Yes.
And Google's really pretty good at figuring out the canonical version, but SEO's job is really to say, hey, don't make Google think this is what we want Google to rank. This is the URL we want Google to rank. We don't want Google to rank the HTTP version. We want Google to rank the HTTPS version. We don't want Google to rank the AMP version. We want, and so forth. So it makes having an SEO on staff who understands that their ability to actually go ahead and make that happen is very important. So make Google not think about that.
Would you say that it's a waste of time because Google could probably figure it out on their own?
For most sites, it's probably not the number one priority.
Right.
If your homepage title, if your title tag for your homepage is homepage, that's probably the number one problem.
Important.
If Google cannot crawl you because you have a no index on it, that's number one problem. But I would say it's probably lower on the list. It might be a bigger problem for those who already have SEOs.
Right.
So it all depends on resources and what the priorities are.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to the next topic. You wanted to talk about fun stuff around feature snippets, and
Yes.
people also ask, and how you could kind of figure out content ideas or generate content around it.
Yes. So, as I said, originally I got into SEO because of my love for writing, and that's something that stays with me. And it's always fun to try to play around with the same content, repurpose it, and see how it ranks differently. And something I learned is that really just restructuring content in different ways can really help with the feature snippets. And that's mostly by thinking about Google Voice, which is really voice search, because I think to myself, after I write a piece of content, I should say it out loud and try to think in a Q&A kind of tone. If somebody asks, if somebody actually says, a human says this query, is Google going to be able to pull a snippet off the page and answer it? And if the answer is yes, you have a better chance of getting into that featured snippet. If the answer is no, go back and try to get more into that Q&A kind of tone. So obviously there are different types of featured snippets, and there's tables, there are queries, and you want to try to answer for the featured snippet type that works with your content. But in general, I feel that Q&A tone really works best for it. A tool that I love to use for this is Answer the Public, where they're telling you all the queries that people may be asking around this piece of content and guiding you toward that, where you can answer all the questions. Taking it a step further, once you've rewritten your content in that way, the next thing is that people love doing now, marking up a page with the FAQ and the how-to schema. And I don't know that helps. I have seen studies that say that it does. So I would say, why not? Go for it. You put the work into the content, take it a step further, put in the schema, and see if it will rank for that.
Right. I think we've seen recently examples of feature snippets with FAQ schema also with it, but I think Google's gone on record saying the schema doesn't help the feature snippets rank or anything like that. On a single piece of page where you have multiple pieces of content, how many sections of that content are you optimizing for a feature snippet? Is it one piece per page, or is it multiple pieces per page?
So it depends really on the content, and I think that goes back to the question of, do we want to take one page, put in a ton of content, and really answer it very much in depth, and then try to break it up into different parts? Or do we want to have individual pages and each one ranking for specific keywords? So I think if our overall MO is to break it into individual pages and each page is ranking for specific keywords, it's very easy. On a longer page, it's harder, but I don't think it's a problem. I think on a longer page using the header tags, you could say within each header, I'm going to try to rank specific pieces of content for the featured snippet, and it works. It absolutely does.
Interesting. I implemented the whole voice thing where Google Assistant would actually give you like news snippets. I forgot what it was called. It was some type of schema. I still have it, where I would actually add in a new section in my CMS just for how I want Google to read back this piece of content to somebody who's getting it on Google Assistant or voice search. So that's a good way of thinking about it. Can somebody actually, when you speak it out loud, doesn't make sense to the person? That's a good tip that I think people could learn a lot
That's what
from.
I like to do with it.
On the people also ask, what are your thoughts around that?
So I feel like one leads into the next. Once you have a piece of content that's really optimized well for featured snippets, I would go to the people also ask box, and it's kind of, I've seen different iterations of it where sometimes it's infinite, it'll just keep going, and sometimes they'll keep giving you the same 4 questions. But basically, it's a great indication for what people are searching for related to this topic, the questions that are there. So I would take those questions, incorporate it into the content, and try to answer those as well. So A, it gives you good ideas of what else to add, but B, it tells you what Google finds important and what maybe should be prioritized within the content. And I find that once I have that featured snippet, then it's sometimes also easier to get the people also ask box as well.
That makes sense. And it's always fun I mean, the feature snippet is a lot of machine learning going on in terms of how Google does it. So one day you might have it, one day you might not.
Exactly.
Google might change it. You could change it and play games with them.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of fun SEO experiments around feature snippets. So thank you for sharing that information. Anything else you want to?
Yeah, sure, sorry.
Yeah.
So I also had once like an interesting thing with a feature snippet where we had a piece of content that different websites scraped and posted. It was a duplicate.
Right.
Google did not pick up on it, and the competitor had our content in the featured snippet. So it kind of took us a while till we got it back, but it was like, you didn't just scrape our content, you took our box.
Right.
So eventually I had to send DMCA takedown request for them to take the content down, and what do you know, the next day we had the feature snippet. So
That's a pain. How long did that take?
it took a while, took a few months.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I reached out to the webmaster a few times, and until I was like, okay, we'll just go to your host and do it that way.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. If people want to learn more about you, find out about you, follow you on social media, where can they do
LinkedIn
so?
is best, Faye Friedman on LinkedIn. And again, yes, I work in-house at a property management company called AJH, but I post everything about social media and SEO and anything I find interesting in search on my LinkedIn account.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was Faye. 10 years in SEO, really knows her stuff. Really great to speak to her. A bit sunny, so I apologize for all the squinting I had on my end, but really nice location. Great to be outside. It was finally warmed up a bit. And I still don't know who won the election yet, so by the time you watch this video, you probably will know. And hopefully there won't be too much fighting about it. Hope you enjoy it. Speak to you guys soon. Bye-bye.